You ever notice how fast your mood can flip? One moment you're calm, the next, somebody cuts you off in traffic or makes a sarcastic remark, and suddenly you're boiling inside. It feels like they took control of your emotions, right? Like they reached inside and pushed some kind of invisible button. I used to believe that too, that other people could make me angry or ruin my day. But then I discovered something that honestly blew my mind. Anger, scientifically, only lasts about 90 seconds in your body. That's it, a minute and a half. After that, the only reason it lingers is because we keep feeding it, by replaying the story, by rehearsing what they said, by imagining the perfect comeback we never delivered. The initial spark? It's gone. What keeps the fire burning is us, striking the match over and over again. Think about how different life could be if you actually believed that. Imagine not letting anyone steal more than 90 seconds of your peace. Imagine going through your day unshaken, even when someone tries to provoke you. That's not superhuman, it's awareness. And once I realized that, it changed everything. See, most of us live like victims of other people's words or actions. We think they know how to push my buttons. But here's the truth that's both uncomfortable and freeing. Nobody installed those buttons except us. The things that trigger us now are usually old wounds, old stories, old patterns that never got healed. When someone presses on them, they're not creating the pain, they're exposing it. And when I saw that clearly, I stopped blaming people for making me mad, and started asking myself, why is this bothering me in the first place? That's when I learned that anger is almost never the real problem. It's the mask. It's the armor we throw up when underneath we're feeling something more raw. Hurt, shame, fear, or insecurity. And the reason we cling to anger is because it feels safer. Rage feels powerful. Admitting we feel small or wounded doesn't. But when you see anger for what it really is, you can actually deal with what's underneath, instead of letting the anger run your life. I want to give you an image that helped me. Picture a storm passing over the ocean. The waves are crashing, the lightning is striking, but a few feet below the surface, the water is calm. Anger is the storm. It's loud, chaotic, and temporary. But you are the ocean. The storm only defines you if you identify with it. The moment you realize you're the ocean and not the storm, you stop being tossed around. This is what Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, was pointing to when he said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Even in a concentration camp where everything was stripped away, he recognized that no one could take away his ability to choose his response. If he could find freedom there, then we can certainly find it in traffic, at work, or in our relationships. That realization set me free. I began to experiment with it in real life. The next time someone spoke down to me, I didn't immediately snap back. I noticed the irritation rising, almost like I was an observer watching my own body. And in that microsecond of awareness, I realized I didn't have to take the bait. I didn't have to hand over my power. And the moment I chose differently, the situation changed. I wasn't reactive. I was calm. And ironically, that calmness shifted the entire atmosphere. Now imagine if you could carry that into every part of your life. What if no one could make you angry unless you gave them permission? What if you became the kind of person that nothing really bothers, because you see everything as either feedback, a mirror, or an opportunity to grow? That's what this video is about. I'm not going to give you tricks to manage anger. I'm going to show you how to never be controlled by it in the first place. Because once you understand what anger really is, and where it really comes from, you can walk free. And in the second half of this video, I'll share my own thoughts on why this matters not just for your peace, but for your purpose. Because anger drains the energy you could be using to build, to create, to love, to grow. And when you stop letting it hijack you, you don't just feel calmer, you feel stronger. So let's dive in. You know, as I was thinking about this more deeply, I realized there are actually 5 power concepts inside this idea of never letting anger or irritation control your life. If you understand these 5 concepts, not just in your head, but if you practice them until they become part of who you are, you'll notice that people lose their ability to get under your skin. They don't change. Life doesn't suddenly become easy, but you do. And that's what gives you freedom. So let me break it down. The first concept is something I've already hinted at, but now I want to go deeper. Concept 1, the 90-second rule. This one blew me away when I first learned it. Science tells us that emotions like anger are actually chemical events in the body. When something triggers you, an insult, a disrespectful tone, someone cutting you off, the body releases a wave of chemicals. Adrenaline, cortisol, stress hormones. But here's the thing, that chemical surge only lasts 90 seconds. That's it. After about a minute and a half, the chemicals have flushed through your system. So why do people stay angry for hours, sometimes for days? It's because they keep replaying the event in their mind. They keep telling themselves the story. How dare they talk to me like that? I should have said this. Next time, I'll do that. Every time you replay it, you're basically pressing re-inject on that chemical. You're keeping the storm alive long after it could have passed. Think about that. 90 seconds of irritation is natural. Hours of bitterness is a choice. I started testing this in my own life. When something triggered me, I would literally check the clock. I'd say to myself, okay, let's see if this is still here in a minute and a half if I don't touch it. And you know what? Almost every time, if I just breathed, stayed still, and refused to rehearse the story in my head, it dissolved. The irritation melted away like a wave rolling back into the ocean. The first time that happened, it was like a superpower. I realized I didn't have to give anyone more than 90 seconds of my peace. They could throw their words, their looks, their behavior, but I wasn't required to hold it all day. And that shifted something in me. It gave me permission to not take things so personally. Here's the simple truth. People are going to be rude. Drivers will cut you off. Bosses will be unfair. Family will sometimes hurt you. You can't control that, but you can control whether you carry it with you. And when you realize that anger is only a 90-second event, unless you feed it, you stop carrying what doesn't belong to you. Now let me tell you why this matters so much. When you hold anger longer than 90 seconds, you're paying for someone else's mistake with your own peace. They already moved on. The driver doesn't even know your name. The coworker who snapped at you already forgot what they said. But here you are, hours later, still burning. That's the real tragedy of anger. It doesn't just hurt relationships, it robs you of focus, energy, and even creativity. The Bible says, do not let the sun go down on your anger. Now, when I was younger, I thought that just meant, don't hold grudges overnight. But now I see a deeper wisdom. Anger was never meant to live inside you, beyond its natural expiration. Don't let it cross into tomorrow. Don't let it own more space than it deserves. And once you know that, you begin to practice a new kind of awareness. You notice the heat rising, and instead of diving into it, you say, this is just 90 seconds. Let's see if it passes. You give yourself space. And in that space, you find freedom. Let me give you an example. I remember a business negotiation where someone tried to lowball me so badly it felt like an insult. My first instinct was to fire back, to prove I knew my worth. But I caught myself. I remembered the 90-second rule. So I just stayed quiet. I breathed. And within a minute, the sting faded. My head cleared. And instead of reacting emotionally, I responded strategically. I countered calmly, confidently, and I walked away with a better deal. That's the power of 90 seconds. It keeps you from turning a temporary spark into a destructive fire. And here's the bigger picture. If you can master the 90-second rule, you can master yourself. Because every battle you win in that 90-second window is a battle that multiplies into your relationships, your work, your finances. You conserve energy. You protect clarity. You stay grounded. So the first concept is this. Anger is temporary. If you let it pass, you win. If you feed it, you lose. And this is just the beginning. Because once you see how short-lived anger really is, the next concept will show you something even deeper. That the people who push your buttons aren't actually in control of you at all. And that's what we'll get into next. Now that you understand the 90-second rule, here's the second power concept. And honestly, this one hit me even harder. Concept 2. The button pusher myth. We've all said it before. They know how to push my buttons. Maybe it was about a spouse, a boss, a family member, or even a random stranger. And when we say it, what we really mean is they control me. They know how to make me react. But let's pause and really think about this. Are they actually controlling you, or are they just exposing something already inside of you? Here's the truth. People don't install the buttons. Those triggers you feel are not created in the moment. They're already there, built over years of experiences, stories, and wounds. Someone pushing your buttons doesn't mean they're powerful. It means you've got something unhealed that reacts when touched. This is both uncomfortable and freeing at the same time. It's uncomfortable because it means you can't blame everyone else for your emotions. It's freeing because once you realize that, you can start to heal the actual button so it no longer works. Let me give you an example. I remember a time when someone dismissed my work as just luck. At that moment, I felt this fire of anger rise up in me. Why? Because deep down, I still carried a wound about not being taken seriously, about being underestimated. Their comment didn't install that wound, it just pressed on it. If that wound wasn't there, the words wouldn't have landed. I would have brushed it off. This is why the Bible says in Proverbs 4:23, "Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life." The heart here isn't just about emotions, it's about the inner programming, the stored up beliefs and wounds. If your heart is full of unresolved pain, people will trigger it without even trying. But if your heart is healed and guarded, they can say the same thing and it won't stick. Think about this like a bruise on your arm. If someone taps your healthy arm, no problem. But if they tap the bruised spot, you flinch. You pull back. You lash out. The pain was already there. The tap just revealed it. That's what emotional triggers are. And here's where the myth gets broken. It's not that people are pushing your buttons on purpose, although sometimes they do. It's that you've left unhealed areas wide open. The power to fix that doesn't lie in changing them. It lies in healing you. When I realized this, I stopped being so offended by people. I started to see triggers as teachers. Every time something made me react, I asked myself, why did that sting? What story am I still carrying that made that comment feel so personal? And in asking that, I began to do the deeper work. I started shifting from being a reactor to being a learner. And let me tell you, that shift transformed my business and my relationships. Before, I would take criticism as an attack. Now I can see it as either feedback I can use or noise I can ignore. Either way, I don't get stuck in the emotional storm. That's the power of breaking the button pusher myth. And think about this. If someone really could control you by pushing a button, that means you're not free. It means your peace belongs to them. But that's a lie. God didn't design you to be at the mercy of anyone else's words. He designed you with dominion, with the ability to rule your own spirit. Proverbs 16:32 says, "Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city." That verse hit me hard. It means self-mastery is greater than conquest. You could take over the world, but if people can still control your emotions with a sentence, you're not free. On the other hand, if you master yourself, you're untouchable, even if the world is against you. Let me give you a practical way this works. The next time someone says something that triggers you, don't just react. Instead, pause and ask, what button did they just press? Why does this matter so much to me? The awareness of the button is the first step to healing it. And once it's healed, that button no longer works. They can press all they want and nothing happens. Imagine that kind of freedom. Someone insults you and you just smile. Someone disrespects you and it rolls right off. Not because you don't care, but because you're healed. You no longer live as a puppet of other people's words. That's the second concept. And it sets us up for the third, which goes even deeper. Because once you see that anger is short-lived and that your triggers are just unhealed buttons, you're ready to uncover what anger is really hiding beneath the surface. And that's where the transformation really starts. So let's go deeper. If the 90-second rule shows us that anger is short-lived, and the button pusher myth shows us that people only expose what's already inside us, then the third power concept reveals something even more important. Anger is almost never the real emotion. Concept 3. Anger hides vulnerability. I want you to really think about the last time you were truly angry. Not just annoyed, not just irritated, but really heated. Ask yourself this. What was underneath it? Because if you peel back the layers, almost every time you'll find something softer hiding beneath the fire. Here's what I mean. Anger is like armor. It's loud, it's sharp, it looks strong, but it's really a cover-up. What it usually covers is hurt, fear, shame, or insecurity. These are vulnerable emotions, and most of us don't like to admit them. So instead, we reach for anger because it feels more powerful. Anger says, I'm in control. Hurt says, I'm in pain. Fear says, I feel small. Which one do you think we'd rather show the world? Exactly, we pick anger. But here's the trap. When we let anger dominate, we never actually heal what's underneath. We just keep fighting with the armor on, protecting wounds that remain open. And that means we get triggered over and over again because the real issue never gets addressed. Let me tell you a personal story. There was a time early in my journey when someone very close to me criticized my choices. On the outside, I blew up. I defended myself, raised my voice, listed all the reasons they were wrong. But when I stepped back later, I realized I wasn't really angry at them. I was scared. Scared that maybe they were right, scared that I wasn't enough. My anger wasn't strength, it was fear in disguise. And this is where the awareness becomes powerful. When you catch yourself reacting with anger, you can pause and ask, what am I really feeling underneath this? Am I hurt because I don't feel respected? Am I afraid because I don't feel secure? Am I ashamed because I feel exposed? That's the real work. Because once you name the real feeling, the anger starts to lose its grip. Science backs this up too. Psychologists talk about anger as a secondary emotion. That means it doesn't usually come first. Something else hits first, a sense of loss, rejection, fear, and then anger shows up as the bodyguard. It's easier to be mad than to be scared. It's easier to shout than to cry. But the cost is that you never deal with the root. The Bible also speaks to this. James 1:19 says, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Why doesn't human anger produce good results? Because it's usually misdirected. It's armor, not truth. It's covering the deeper reality God actually wants to heal. And here's the freedom. Once you realize anger is just a mask, you don't have to let it run your life. You can actually start practicing honesty with yourself. Instead of saying, I'm angry, you can say, I feel disrespected, or I feel scared, or I feel overlooked. Those are harder to admit, yes, but they're the doorway to healing, because you can't fix what you don't face. This awareness changed how I approach my business too. Before, if a client criticized me, I'd get defensive and frustrated. Now I check myself. I ask, why does this comment sting so much? And most of the time, the truth is, it poked at a fear inside me, that I wasn't delivering enough, or that I wasn't good enough. When I owned that, I could grow instead of just getting mad. I could improve instead of wasting energy arguing. Think about how powerful that is. If every time anger rises, you ask, what's under this? You stop fighting ghosts. You stop battling surface-level stuff and start healing the core. And once you do that, people lose their power to trigger you. They can say the same words, and you won't react because the wound they used to poke has been closed. It's like patching a leak in your roof. If you don't fix it, every time it rains, water comes in. You can curse the rain, blame the clouds, scream at the weather, but the problem isn't the sky, it's the hole in your roof. Fix the roof, and the rain no longer bothers you. Same with anger. Fix what's underneath, and the trigger no longer owns you. So here's the challenge I want to give you with this concept. The next time you feel anger rising, don't just explode or suppress it. Sit with it. Ask yourself, what's the softer emotion I'm hiding? What's the truth underneath? It might feel uncomfortable at first, but if you stick with it, you'll find it's actually liberating. Because the moment you name the real feeling, you take away anger's disguise. That's why Jesus taught about truth so much. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That applies not just to spiritual truth, but to emotional truth. The truth underneath your anger, the hurt, the fear, the shame. When you see it clearly, you can be free. And once you get this, it unlocks a whole new level of peace. Because you stop wasting energy fighting surface-level battles. You conserve your strength for what really matters. And that's when you start to experience a kind of calm that feels unshakable. So that's the third concept. Anger hides vulnerability. And if you want to live free, you have to stop hiding from what anger is covering. Because when you face the vulnerability, the anger loses its power. Now, once you see this clearly, you're ready for the fourth concept. And this one is about stepping into a new kind of strength. The ability to create space between what happens to you and how you respond. That's where your real power lives. Now that we've seen how anger is short-lived, how it only works when our buttons are exposed, and how it usually hides something softer underneath, let's move to one of the most powerful realizations I've ever had. Concept 4. The space between stimulus and response. This concept comes from Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the Holocaust, losing almost everything, but still discovering a freedom that no guard, no prison, no system could take away from him. He said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Think about that for a moment. Every single time something happens to you, whether it's someone cutting you off in traffic, a partner raising their voice, a coworker disrespecting you, there's always a moment, a fraction of a second, where you get to choose. Most people don't see that space. They collapse it. Something happens, they react. Stimulus, reaction. Immediate. Automatic. But here's the secret. If you can expand that space, if you can pause even for a breath, you can turn stimulus into response instead of reaction. And that tiny shift changes everything. Let me tell you how I learned this. There was a time when I used to react instantly. Someone criticized me, I snapped back. Someone doubted me, I went defensive. It was automatic. But when I came across Frankl's idea, I decided to experiment. The next time someone irritated me, instead of immediately firing back, I paused. I took one breath. I told myself, you don't have to react. You can choose. At first it was hard. My body was screaming to lash out. But that pause gave me clarity. And suddenly I realized something powerful. People weren't controlling me anymore. I was in control. That's what the space between stimulus and response really is. It's a doorway to freedom. When you use it, you're no longer a puppet to emotions, habits, or other people's words. You become a person of choice. And that's where growth happens. Let's tie this to science for a moment. Neuroscience shows that our brain has two main systems when responding to life. One is fast, automatic, emotional, the amygdala. It reacts instantly to threats. The other is slower, thoughtful, logical, the prefrontal cortex. It takes a bit longer to engage, but it's the part of the brain that makes wise decisions. Most of us live trapped in the fast brain, reacting, snapping, defending. But when you practice the pause, when you expand that space, you activate the higher brain, you give wisdom a chance to speak. And spiritually, this lines up perfectly. The Bible says in Proverbs 29:11, "Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end." Notice the contrast. The fool collapses the space, anger comes, and they vent it all. But the wise don't deny the anger. They just pause. They hold it, breathe, let God's Spirit bring calm. That pause is what makes the difference. Now here's something practical you can try. The next time you feel anger rising, don't fight it and don't feed it. Just pause and breathe. Count to 3 before you say a word. Ask yourself, what outcome do I want here? And then choose a response that serves that outcome. You'd be surprised how many conflicts vanish, how many battles dissolve, when you simply refuse to give your anger the driver's seat. I applied this in business too. Before, if a deal went wrong, I'd get angry and blame the client or the situation. Now I pause and think, okay, what's the lesson here? What's my best move forward? That pause has saved me from burning bridges, from sabotaging opportunities, from wasting energy. Here's a powerful analogy. Imagine you're holding a glass of water. Someone bumps into you. What spills out? Whatever's inside the glass. If it's water, water spills. If it's coffee, coffee spills. The bump didn't create what spilled. It just revealed it. Life works the same way. When people bump into you, what spills out? Anger, patience, wisdom. The space between stimulus and response is the moment you choose what you're going to carry inside your glass. And here's what's amazing. The more you practice this, the larger the space becomes. At first, maybe you can only pause for 1 second. Over time, you start to pause for 3, then 5, then long enough to make really thoughtful choices. It's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And here's the payoff. the people around you notice. You become that person who doesn't get rattled, who doesn't overreact, who carries calm in the middle of chaos. And do you know what that creates? Influence. People trust calm leaders. They follow people who don't lose control. That space between stimulus and response doesn't just give you peace, it gives you power. Now let me ask you this. Where in your life do you need to create more space? Maybe it's at home, when your kids push your patience. Maybe it's at work, when deadlines and coworkers trigger stress. Maybe it's in traffic, when strangers test your calm. Every one of those moments is an opportunity to practice. Because the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. And let's be honest, this isn't just about anger. That same space works for every emotion. Fear, anxiety, temptation. Whatever stimulus comes your way, you always have a choice in how you respond. And once you embrace that, you stop being a prisoner of circumstance. You step into freedom. That's the fourth concept. And it brings us to the final one, which ties everything together. The realization that the ultimate power is not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself. We've talked about the 90-second rule, the myth of button pushers, the vulnerability hidden under anger, and the space between stimulus and response. Now we come to the final piece of the puzzle, the one that ties it all together. Concept 5, the observer self, mastery over yourself. The last and most liberating realization is this: you are not your emotions. You are the one who observes them. That's a strange thing to say if you've never thought about it before, because most of us live inside our emotions. We say things like, I am angry, I am stressed, I am upset. But pause and think about that language. Are you anger? No. You're a person experiencing anger. Are you stress? No. You're a person feeling stress. The shift is subtle but powerful. The moment you step into the role of observer, your emotions lose their power to control you. Instead of, I am angry, you can say, I notice anger rising in me. That one shift creates space. It takes you out of being fused with the emotion and puts you in the driver's seat. Think about it this way. Imagine sitting on the side of a river. The water flowing by is your emotions, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy, sometimes flooding. Most people jump in the river and get swept away, but you don't have to. You can sit on the bank and watch the water flow. You can notice, there's irritation, there's sadness, there's joy. And in that noticing, you're free. This is what spiritual teachers have always said. The Bible puts it like this in Proverbs 25:28. Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. Without self-control, you're defenseless. Every wave of emotion takes over. But when you learn to step back, to observe, you rebuild the walls of your city. You regain your strength. And here's where it gets really interesting. Neuroscience shows that when you observe your own emotions, different parts of your brain light up. It's called metacognition, thinking about your thoughts. That small act of labeling what you feel actually calms the amygdala, the fight or flight center, and engages the prefrontal cortex, the wise decision maker. In other words, awareness itself changes the brain. Simply noticing your anger already weakens it. I've experienced this firsthand. Before, when something triggered me, I was the anger. It swallowed me whole. But as I practiced observing, I found myself saying, okay, there's frustration. I feel it in my chest. I feel the heat rising. And suddenly, it was like I was watching it instead of being it. And because I was watching, I could choose. Do I speak? Do I stay silent? Do I walk away? The anger no longer dictated the action. I did. That's the ultimate freedom. Because if you master yourself, nothing outside can master you. People can insult you, circumstances can shift, storms can rage, but inside you remain steady. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's power. And here's the thing. This doesn't mean you'll never feel anger again. Emotions are part of being human. You'll still feel the fire rise. But it won't own you. You'll notice it, name it, and then decide what to do with it. That's the difference between being a prisoner of emotions and being the master of them. Now, let me tie this to everything we've covered. The 90-second rule shows that anger is temporary. It only lasts if you keep feeding it. The button pusher myth reveals that nobody can control you unless there's something unhealed inside. The vulnerability under anger helps you see the truth so you can heal, not just react. The space between stimulus and response gives you the choice to act differently. And the observer self crowns it all, reminding you that you are not your anger. You are the one who notices, decides, and acts. This is what real strength looks like. Not exploding at every trigger, not suppressing emotions until they burst, but noticing, pausing, and choosing. That's maturity. That's mastery. And here's the conclusion I want you to hear. The world is full of people who live enslaved by their emotions. They get angry, they get bitter, they get stuck, and they never realize they hold the key to freedom inside them. But you don't have to live like that. So here's my challenge for you today. What's one area in your life where you've been letting anger, irritation, or frustration control you? Maybe it's your workplace. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's online debates. Wherever it is, this week practice observing. Don't say I am angry. Say I notice anger. Don't collapse the space. Expand it. Don't run from the vulnerability. Face it and watch what happens. Because the moment you stop being a prisoner of your emotions, you step into a peace and a power that few people ever find. Remember this. Emotions are visitors. You are the home. And the home always decides who stays.